Hello, everybody, and welcome to our new Arbitrum for Builders series. This is going to be a new series that we're launching where Off-Chain Labs will talk to you about some of the things we have planned for Arbitrum chains over the next couple months. This particular episode is the first part of the series where we're going to be talking about ultimate interop. So this is going to be important for people who are both building on Arbitrum, but also anybody who's really interested in learning about what are Off-Chain Labs plans for Arbitrum chains. My name is David Dennis. I'm on the product marketing team here at Off-Chain Labs. And before we introduce the rest of the team, I have a little bit of disclaimer. In the course of today's discussion, we're going to be talking about a lot of future possibilities about interop as seen from the point of view of Off-Chain Labs. Off-Chain Labs is still evaluating various approaches. Any of these may or may not come to fruition or be adopted by Arbitrum chains, which of course is controlled by the DAO. Additionally, anything in this panel discussion shouldn't be considered commentary on any future DAO proposals related to interoperability. Again, this is just a little bit of a glimpse of what Off-Chain Labs is looking for and may come to fruition or may not over the course of the future. So with that, let's go ahead and bring in the rest of our team and do some introductions. Okay, hi guys, welcome to the show.
Howdy.
Howdy. We'll just go around like clockwise, starting with Ed around the top. Ed, if you want to kick it off first.
Hi, I'm Ed. I'm a co-founder and chief scientist at Off-Chain Labs.
Great.
Hi, I'm Chris. I'm a smart contract engineer here at Off-Chain Labs.
Thank you. Spencer, you're up.
I'm Spencer. I'm an ecosystem product manager at Off-Chain Labs.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cooper. I'm also on the product team at Off-Chain.
And hi, I'm Henry, and I'm also on the smart contract team at Off-Chain Labs.
Great. Okay, thanks everybody. So we got a good, nice audience here between the head honcho who's doing research and all the worker bees. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and start off. So Ed, we'll start with you. You know, interoperability is a term that people kind of toss around. It can be interpreted a lot of different ways. There's a lot of, really highly technical details at the protocol level that may be, a bit arcane for kind of normal people to understand. Before we get into the specific technology discussions about what you could use to implement interoperability, what's sort of the North Star we're talking about when we think about interop from an end user and chain builder perspective, and what does sort of like the end state look like?
Sure. Yeah, so really it's all about making the user experience and developer experience more seamless across different chains. Today, there's more friction than there ought to be when you have to move assets across chains, do operations across chains, or build an application that operates across a bunch of chains. And you want to make that easier and faster. But it's important how you do that. I think you can look to a model like the internet as a good one, right? The internet allows you to access a lot of different services in a lot of different places. You can do it from the same device and in a way that feels relatively seamless, right? You know which site you're on, you know what you're doing, but there's not a ton of friction as you move across. And it's really important that this be done in a way that is inclusive. Right? That it's not about who can interoperate. It's not about setting up barriers or having some club you have to join in order to be able to interoperate. The idea is that joining and participating in cross-chain interop is permissionless. Anybody can do it. There isn't central governance that you have to submit yourself to because it's your chain, your rules. It's about creating opportunity and opening doors rather than closing them.
So if that's kind of the end user state that we want to get to, and also even in some ways philosophical and value goals as well, that's going to take a while to build out. So if we think about kind of like the technology phases, kind of like where are we at now and how do we kind of step our way into that going forward?
Yeah, like anything else, it's going to happen in stages. Some of it has already happened. So, Arbitrum chains have had permissionless deposit and withdrawal from the beginning. One of the major steps forward that happened recently was the addition of fast withdrawals for Arbitrum technology chains that are using AnyTrust. That means that in addition to moving assets onto a chain or passing a message, into a chain, you can also withdraw relatively quickly in a matter of minutes. And that's available today on a lot of Arbitrum orbit chains. So that's an important step, but there's at least two more big steps or type of steps that we have in the future. One of them has to do with adoption of a set of interop standards that are currently being discussed in the Ethereum and L2 community. And I'm sure we're going to talk more about those as the conversation goes on. But that's things around basically having fast asset transfer. And a lot of those are technologies around things like intents. Again, I expect we'll discuss those more as we go on. But then as we project farther into the future, it's really about pushing all of the metrics that people care about most. It's about making interop faster, so that instead of minutes, you're talking seconds and like low single-digit seconds. Can you do stuff cross-chain in 1 or 2 seconds? It's about making it more trustless so that you don't have to rely as much on intermediaries to behave honestly, or intermediaries who can stop you from getting your interop done. And it's about making it more general, so that the set of things you can do across chains expands beyond just moving assets or doing swaps to all kinds of richer functionalities. And so there's a ton of exciting research going on at Off-Chain Labs and other places to try to sort of push that boundary forward. And we're really excited about some of the things that we're currently cooking up in the labs now. So I think that it's going to be a journey, but Interop is going to get steadily better. And I think it's going to get better faster than people anticipate.
If we dig into that cross-chain aspect a little bit, and since you mentioned the internet, that sounds to me like you're also talking about people who make chains could talk to other chains who may provide a service that I want to then use in my app. Like if it was the Web 2 world, you might say like, oh, this is where like SaaS providers might have something where they talk to another SaaS provider who provides a functionality that they need in their app. Is that kind of analogous?
Yes, I mean, it is kind of like the internet in that way, that right, Interop is for users, but it's also for developers. People can develop services that work, that can integrate with other services, so that you can take that kind of on-chain Lego model and apply it across chains. It's about someone being able to build applications that exist across a set of chains, but offer a seamless user experience without the friction based on which chain that a particular user is on. It's about supporting all of that so that you get closer and closer to that internet-like model, where it feels like you have a big open space that scales up by adding more infrastructure, more services, more chains to it, but without making the user experience, without a sort of balkanized user experience.
Right. So rolling back a little bit, there's some roll-up pun in there maybe, but I don't know. So Cooper, you were one of the people who worked a lot on fast withdrawals. We mentioned it in a roadmap blog post, I think in August or something like that. We announced it a couple months ago. There's been a fair amount of adoption by both RAS service providers and chains implementing it themselves. Give us kind of the overview of what's going on there for fast withdrawals and how people should think about it, and like what does it mean to like the average person or chain builder for that matter.
Yeah, absolutely. So, my tagline for fast withdrawals is that it's native fast finality for Arbitrum chains. With fast withdrawals, you can achieve 15-minute finality on an L2 or 15-second finality on an L3. These are massive improvements over what is essentially the current 7-day challenge period. And if you're an any trust chain, you can do this without introducing any new trust assumptions. So that's another, I'd say, major differentiator, where most fast finality solutions basically introduce trust as opposed to rely on existing trust. And as you said, it was launched earlier this year. There's about half a dozen chains with it live. It's available on any RAS provider. They're all enabled to deliver it to any orbit chain. But I think it's also worth mentioning why fast finality matters for both chains and users. If you wanted to move an asset from one chain to another, whoever's actually moving the asset is going to come up against that challenge period. And if you're a user, often a whale will directly use the canonical bridge. But a lot of users with smaller transfers, they're going to use something like a fast bridge or a solver. So they're going to get that fast experience. What they're also facing is the upfront cost of paying that liquidity provider to front the funds over that 7 days. So if you bring that down to 15 minutes, that's literally a 624 times improvement on how much liquidity needs to be locked up for. And so in the open market that is fast bridges and solvers, we really do imagine those costs being passed on to users. I would also say the second big effect is that we're opening up a lot of high trust routes that are also fast within orbit. So the more orbit chains that adopt fast withdrawals, it basically creates these kind of 15-minute, 15-second pathways that communication can go through basically a canonical implementation. So without any trust assumptions. So that just kind of leads to a generally more connected and densely interoperable ecosystem for Arbitrum chains.
I think one of the things also that kind of blew my mind about it was that you talked about how we massively dropped the time down, from days to minutes. And I can't do an ACH transfer in TradFi in 15 minutes. So
Yeah,
it's kind of like if you talk to normal people, well, why does any of this stuff matter? I can't do a bank to bank transfer in 15 minutes and have it show up on the other side. That, at least not with my banks. That never happens. So the fact that this exists now, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, ACH transfers are always my fun litmus test for crypto experiences, which is this less frustrating than going to the bank?
Right. That's a good, and everybody can relate to it. That's a good one. Spencer, you've been taking the lead on Intents, and about a month ago or so, I think during the middle of DevCon, we announced support for ERC 7683, which is one of the standards for Intents for Ethereum. What capabilities might this bring to Arbitrum chains, and how can we break it down for the state things now versus what it'll be like after we have Intents?
Yeah, so 7683 is a very general standard that's being embraced by the Ethereum community. And it standardizes two pieces of the intent stack, one being the general message. So a user wants to swap Ethereum from Arbitrum 1 to Ape on Ape Chain. So that is the intent. So 7683 standardizes the format at which that's transmitted. After that, it's up to the chain owner, the app owner, anybody to decide on the actual settlement process for what that looks like. So the end state of this is with 7683 live and a lot of the solver infrastructure in place today, what we can expect to see is a general cross-chain swap between Arbitrum and an Orbit chain, or even Arbitrum and a non-Orbit chain, even to Ethereum mainnet, should be performed in 1 to 3 seconds.
In addition to the speed increase, do we think there's, and you can feel free to speculate here a little bit, do we think this will also lead to, fewer clicks and kind of less steps and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can already see this on Uniswap with Permit 2, is how they're actually acting as an agent to aggregate the user's intent and transmit that. I think we'll see more methods like that, but the end goal is that a user just signs one thing and whatever they want to do is done.
Awesome. And then there's gas, of course, as well. But I assume that that's also that's separate from the intent standards, but hopefully that would not get worse at least.
Yeah, ideally this would be baked into the actual transaction cost.
Awesome. So now we were kind of talking at a kind of almost at a user, or even I would say architect or kind of chain builder layer. So Henry and Chris, if we kind of take it back to builders themselves, because everything we were talking before was kind of infrastructure and RAS providers and stuff that's not exactly the app itself. If we think about app builders and perhaps they have an app chain as well, what do we think is going to get better and easier as Interop starts to improve for people actually building apps and apps chains?
Well, one thing that'll become a lot easier with some standard APIs and things, it'll be easier for app developers to create these sort of unified experiences where it doesn't really matter where your user is or how they found your application. If they have some money somewhere, they can use your app, things like this. And future EIPs like 7702 might even supercharge this, where really the space of apps that you can build is expanded. And
what's 70702? Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Oh yeah, sure. So 7702 is an account abstraction standard that is slated for inclusion on mainnet soon-ish.
In the Petra release, or
I believe so, yes.
Chris is nodding. Okay. Okay.
So yeah, like that combined with intents and other types of interop could be a really powerful tool for developers to create unique experiences.
Do you think we're kind of getting closer, kind of Ed's point about the internet? Do you think we're kind of getting to the point where in the not too distant future, app developers won't have to care so much about what's happening at the protocol level, that they'll have APIs and other things that they can talk to? Unlike, like a long time ago on the internet, you actually had to care about what your TCP IP stack was doing at some like really basic level. It seems like we're edging close to the point in Web3 where maybe people won't have to worry so much about protocol level stuff anymore.
I think you'll still have to think about it to some extent, but it'll make it a lot easier for you to meet users where they are.
Yeah, I think the users are probably making trade-offs between maybe trust for their specific use case and cost, but they're not necessarily thinking, about the actual experience after that, after they've made their choice, becomes more unified. Maybe there's different solutions that are happening in the back end, but hopefully we can achieve an experience where the user doesn't have to, that's not imposed upon the user. They just make some sort of choices up front, and then they can execute via whatever protocol is going to happen according to that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we do have some time left, so it looks like we've got a couple questions from the crowd. So I'm going to kind of dig into this a little bit. I can tell where this question's coming from. People talk about kind of liquidity fragmentation sometimes in the Ethereum world. So Arbitrum has the most liquidity of any L2 out there. So is Arbitrum's big liquidity a benefit to interoperability? Does that help in some way, or is it sort of irrelevant? Anybody feel free to chime in on this one.
I mean, I think it does help, right? Because it's to me, it's all about creating more opportunities for people who are using Arbitrum chains. And there's a tremendous opportunity on Arbitrum 1 because of all the liquidity that's there, right? But if it's possible to do even more and do things on other chains being on Arbitrum 1, that just makes it even better to be on Arbitrum 1. It makes Arbitrum 1 more attractive. So Interop is a way. Arbitrum 1, I think, will continue to be this sort of hub of DeFi because of the liquidity and the amount of activity there, and just the sheer variety of applications and diversity of applications. But I think Interop just makes that experience better for users.
It just becomes like a force multiplier for the liquidity that's already there.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. Chris, did you have something to add on that? Or
I was going to say it feels synergistic, right? You have more apps on chains that are around Arbitrum 1, and they're closer to that liquidity. They can make use of it, and vice versa. People with that liquidity on Arbitrum 1 can now make use of these services that are closer to them. So I think it works both ways. Yeah.
So that sounds just like you start to get a network effect going on, and you get some kind of economic upside because you're sort of going where the action is, and then that creates a proliferation of additional services and providers and things like that that you can, the ecosystem grows basically, and then you can tap into more as time goes along.
Yeah, you can experiment and build without fragmenting the liquidity.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah, I would also add, something that we see when we talk to builders is, whether it's an Orbit chain or an app, something they want to do very quickly is to bootstrap liquidity. And so definitely access to liquidity, whether it's as an L3 who's deployed on Arbitrum 1, 1 second deposits, 15-second withdrawals canonically makes a huge difference. And then with some of these other, developments like with intent standards, you can definitely imagine how, being connected to Arbitrum 1 becomes one of the best paths to bootstrapping, a DeFi application, or even liquidity in some gaming use cases.
Awesome. The next one, actually, Henry, this is going to dovetail since you sort of mentioned a little bit. Henry, you kind of brought up account abstraction. I know that this question, at least somewhat orthogonally, relates to it. It's about smart wallets, and I know some smart wallets have a little bit of kind of account abstraction-like capabilities built into them. How do we think account abstraction or even smart wallets fits in with Interop? Because everything we were talking about here was sort of, chain-to-chain interoperations. what happens at the user level here?
Something cool that you can do with smart accounts is, like, say you have your smart account somewhere, you might have copies of that smart account on other chains that hold other assets that you might own, and you can kind of control your different smart accounts and interact with apps on different chains through these smart accounts in a pretty interesting way. That's one way that these things can combine together.
So that's that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like, different chain, same wallet. You've got the same account in a different place. You can receive funds in different places, but you've got the same address. It makes taking your wallet to different places. It's already there for you. You can then send or ask for things to be done with that wallet. People can, like paymasters, can use it to send funds from your wallet to different places, use dApps, things like that, without you having to like go over there and use it. And
yeah, I don't think I think at one point I was counting, I had like 5 wallets, because like in order to like interact with all the different chains I wanted to use, there wasn't one of them was compatible with all of them, and it was terrible. Yeah, so awesome.
Yeah, I would also say that like over half of the interop experience falls on the wallet provider. So like a lot of this is already live today. There's so many apps that exist, such as like Slingshot Crypto is one that came to my attention. You swap across any chain in 1 to 3 seconds already. So
Wow.
we're in active collaboration with the Ethereum Foundation and other major L2s in identifying like what sort of wallet standards need to exist and how do we bring that to market to get wallet providers to actually integrate this. So with the actual intent standards built out and then some sort of general fast messaging protocol specific to Arbitrum, it's the entire interop experience is a lot closer today than we actually think.
You said closer, so I'm not gonna hold you to it. So this is just rampant speculation, Spencer. Like a year from now, you think things are going to be dramatically better?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, you're bullish. Awesome, love that. Okay, so we're not going to have to wait like a whole next like 4 years from now, wait till the next cycle. This is soon. So that's great. The next one question from the audience. This is also a little speculative. Does Interop include non-Ethereum chains? Because I saw I forgot their name now, but there was actually somebody who came out with like an L2 using Orbit technology that actually accessed like Bitcoin staking, for example. Now that's not exactly Interop, but if we think about like where's this going, is that kind of farther down the roadmap for you guys? Again, rampant speculation here. This is we're getting well into the just prognostication category.
Yeah, I think you're going to see that happening, and it's already starting to happen, but it won't be as seamless, I think, when you're going outside the Ethereum stack as when you're inside the Ethereum ecosystem, right? Ethereum ecosystem, there's more of a set of standards, and all of these chains settle to or can communicate via, can use Ethereum for coordination. When you have sort of L1 chains that don't have common sort of ancestry that they settle to, it becomes more difficult to do interop. Not impossible, but it's more difficult. There's going to be more friction. It won't be quite as seamless.
Got it. Okay. So possible, but there's going to be some
There's going to be more friction. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
And it'll probably be slower to develop.
Free for all on this one. What's next?
Yeah, so I think in the immediate future for us, looking at 7683, the next step is what does an implementation actually look like for that? How do we get an app like Camelot or GMX to recognize a user's intent, bundle that into a 7683 message, and then output that into some sort of API for solvers to universally plug into? On top of that, it's also, there's a lot of thoughts on how we get solvers to feel more comfortable with fulfilling intents from different L3s. And fast withdrawals is like one major step that's live today toward making solvers more comfortable. So the second half of that is actually talking to all these different solvers and getting them on board.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you saying is intents are coming pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and a little bit further into the future, our research team is really activated on trying to understand how far you can push this. Really, what are the fundamental limits? How fast can it go? How trustless can you make it? How smooth can you make the user experience? And I think there's a lot of room for improvement, even over what our people are imagining today. So, we've talked a little bit publicly about concepts like chain clusters, which give you a sort of open and permissionless way to connect different chains together for very fast interop. But I think you can even go to a more flexible, more sort of opt-in kind of plan than that. I think there's some really exciting stuff in the pipeline that, because some of the basic concepts that are coming out of the research labs are kind of amazing.
Okay, so now you've teased us. We'll have to wait to hear. We'll have to wait for the big reveal on when that is. So, okay, great. Okay. Chris, Henry, Cooper, anything else to add to what Spencer and Ed said?
I think I would add, to Spencer's previous point, which is that a lot of, what we're trying to do and a lot of the value that we can provide comes from enabling, all the infra providers to create this experience themselves. And so to that extent, it's a combination of fundamental kind of stack improvements, like fast withdrawals and coordinating the partners themselves, like like an intense rollout. So, just attacking this at every level of the stack is something that we're focused on. And really, our end goal is just to make sure that the users and apps kind of have the best experiences possible by kind of accruing all these performance efficiencies at every layer.
So we want not only have to build them, but we want to make them as turnkey as possible for people who are going to implement it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just a seamless, great experience.
Right. Okay, Chris. Chris, Henry, anything else?
No, just I would reiterate that I think like our game plan really is to plug gaps where we see them in the stack, and where we see areas of the stack we can improve, we take it to the next level.
Cool.
Yeah, agree with that completely.
Agree with everything. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we reached consensus there. Okay, with that, thank you everybody. We're pretty much at time, so we'll go ahead and end it here. And thank you to our audience as well. And with that, Jeffrey, you can go ahead and take us out.